Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Becc Holland. I'm the head of sales development at Chorus.ai. Today I want to talk about a really special subject for me of webinar registrants, ebook downloads, and event leads, what to do with them, what to call them, how to sequence them, and what to say to them to cause conversion. So within the sales development community and the prospecting community, you typically have inbound leads and then you have outbound leads. But then there's this sneaky kind of category in the middle. So an inbound lead is going to be someone who requests a demo or comes in through your chat line like Drift or Intercom. An outbound lead is someone who has never heard of my brand and I need to spend a lot of time and attention to go and hunt them to try and cause conversion. But the leads that I really wanted to talk about today has been pretty ambiguous and we haven't put a lot of ambit and direction is all of those leads in the middle who aren't technically hand raisers yet, but do know who my brand is. So what I typically call them, with no further ado, is postbound leads. So in basketball, a post is typically a position that sits somewhere between the top of the key and the basket. So I wanted to call them postbound leads because they're right in the middle. Like, they haven't actually raised their hand if they want your product, but they also do know who your brand is. So postbound is what I call them. And these again are webinar leads, event leads, and then ebook or resource downloads. So these are people who know your content, know your brand, but aren't typically, they aren't quite hand raisers yet. So this is what I call them in terms of who to hand them to. So I've seen them handed to both teams. Some people call them inbound, and if you hand them to your inbound team, then typically your inbound team is going to say these aren't true inbound leads because they aren't asking for a demo. So if I wanted a demo whenever I was going through your webinar, then there was a nice, neat demo request button on the side, and so I would have become a hand raiser if I wanted to. So your inbound team would say to you, these aren't true leads because the conversion's much lower than a demo request. And if you hand them to the outbound team, they're going to say, this is great because they know who we are. So if I'm a prospect or if I'm someone in the market and I see a great valuable piece of content and I download something, typically what I want is the content. I don't want a demo of your platform. So I've seen a lot of prospects get mad at this point because they're like, hey, I just wanted your content in peace. I wanted to read your 21 cold calling habits or how to sell to the C-suite in peace, but I didn't want someone following up with me and hammering me with a bunch of emails or different calls. So typically the view of how I view them is that they should go to the outbound team because they are a little bit triggered more higher in buyer readiness, but we still need to use the same level of technique and outbound alacrity to book them. So who I send them to typically is the outbound team, and I build sequences or cadences depending on who your sales engagement vendor is that go like this. So the first sequence that I build is a high ICP, high engagement. For ebook. So high ICP is defined as your ideal customer profile. It means that is someone that you really like to sell to, whether that's in terms of the company's a great company or they're a great role for you to sell to within the company. High ICP means this is typically someone who really meshes well with your product and really likes to buy your product. So high ICP means they're the right person. High engagement means they're downloading a lot of your ebooks. So this is again for ebooks. The next sequence that I build is high ICP, low engagement. So this is, again, someone that you really want to talk to and typically sell well to, and they are downloading some of your material, but not a lot. The last sequence for ebooks is low ICP, high engagement for ebooks. So this is someone that's not typically someone that you really want to hunt after. However, they're not a great buyer for a myriad of reasons. Of maybe they're just not the right size company. Maybe they're a little bit lower than you typically sell to, within the hierarchical chain of the company. but they're downloading a lot of your stuff. So it's reasonable to say that it would be a quick win if you reach out to them. And then the last one, or the last two that I put together are high ICP for webinar, and then high ICP for events. So using lead scoring based on some kind of typical criterion, I will automatically flow high ICP, someone who's defined as a high ICP within my CRM, and who's been downloading a lot of stuff into an ebook sequence, high ICP, low engagement, low ICP, high engagement. Low ICP, low engagement, I actually don't reach out to because they aren't downloading a lot of my stuff and they aren't a typical buyer. And then I finish off with high ICP for webinar and high ICP for events. So when my SDRs walk in for the day, they know that they're going to talk to the people in these sequences first before they go on to normal outbound. So now the $4 million question is, or $4 billion question is, what do you say to them? What do you say to them to cause conversion? So again, if I'm downloading some of your content and I didn't become a hand raiser in the process, it's very likely that there's some kind of objection or some kind of reason that I didn't do that. So when you have your SDR team follow up on these kind of leads and use that as the only premise of, hi, I noticed that you came to this event, do you want a demo? You'll typically get buyers that are really, upset that you are hammering them with some kind of emails and some kind of calls. So, what I took that as a trigger is I want to provide this postbound premise to my prospect for context, but then I want to transition into an outbound reason that's personalized to that actual person to cause conversion. So how I do that is I have the postbound premise for context. I transition with, but more importantly, and then I finish with a LinkedIn outbound premise summary. So how that looks like is this. Hi, Sean. I noticed that you downloaded our 21 top cold calling habits, but more importantly, I saw from your LinkedIn profile that you wrote this article on scaling effective teams, so I was curious to know if you came across Chorus before. So again, you want to mention this postbound premise for just context, and they did engage with you, and then transition with, but more importantly, and you want to talk about your actual prospect themselves. So there's 5 different buckets on the premises that you can pick. There's a lot of different things like, content that the prospect authored, whether that's articles, webinars like this, or posts, content that they've engaged with, commented, liked, shared, junk drawer premises like their social media interests or personal interests or self-attributed traits, something within their profile line, headline, or company overview. But the most important piece is that you're giving this for context, but then you're transitioning and making the entire conversation about Sean in specific. You don't want to just talk about something that he did. You don't want to just talk about something that he was involved in that's in relation to your company, because then it's again pointing to that your company is the hero. So you want to transition to the actual prospect and buyer on the back end and turn the conversation into what they did in specific, into all about them, so that they're more likely to engage with you in a conversation because you did that research on the front end. So that's it in summary. What you call those leads in between are postbound leads. These are webinar registrants, event leads, ebook or resource downloads. How you structure them is within these 5 sequences, dependent on their ICP and their level of engagement with your content. And then to finish, what you say to them on the phone is listing the postbound reason for premise, transition with, but more importantly, and then talk all about them or a premise on something within their LinkedIn. Thanks everybody so much for watching, and hope you have a great rest of your day.